50% of the media spend in Norway in 2024 went to the big tech. And of course, that sounds horrible.
Everybody assumes that digital growth equals more money for publishers. Why do you think they're not getting the same when the advertising spend is going up? Today's guest is Anne Jack, Managing Director of WPP in Norway, and one of the most influential media buyers in the world. In this episode, we dive into the future of advertising, how big tech is reshaping media, and what publishers must do to stay in the game.
Have young kids as well. They don't even know what news is, exactly what YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat is. We as a media agency are trying to connect all these dots, and having a cross-channel vision, that doesn't work because then we can't use AI to optimize the way we want.
What do you think that publishers can do today to get more attention in your media plan? And
I think to give us access to the best.
So, and everybody assumes that digital growth equals more money and maybe more money for publishers. But I think what I've seen is that that's actually not the case. Why do you think that is the case currently? That they're not getting the same advertising money that when the advertising spend is going up?
I think it's about the type of products maybe that they're offering and the easy access for maybe smaller to medium brands and performance agencies and maybe prices and inventory to buy advertising space for brands. So I think if you compare it to the big techs, they have the power and the technology and the investments in order to create platforms that are very user-friendly for specialist smaller media agencies. I can see for ourselves working in WPP Media is that we have a much better relationship. Let's use Norway as a comparison. Number one, the publishing media landscape is much more consolidated. You know, you have a few big players, and that makes our collaboration much easier. We have easy access and we can scale much easier. So our share is quite much less than the general market in Norway, for instance, and in the Nordics. But I think it's hard for a smaller agency that don't have the same negotiation power with the media houses the same way. And then, of course, social media and the big techs and paid search and stuff like that will be much more accessible. And you can see immediate returns because a lot of it is about bottom of the funnel money. So I can understand why this is happening. And this is kind of trying to challenge maybe the publishers to think other ways. And obviously, they're not always going to be comparable to the social media platforms, but trying to take more of that space and kind of replicate what the techs are trying to do some way, somehow, get a better collaboration with the smaller agencies and brands and make it easier. I think that will help unlock more budgets towards newspapers and publishers. But then at the same time, there's another discussion around, they are for different purposes. If you read the news, you read the news. Are you on social media? Most likely you're there to relax and digest short form content rather than you don't spend 3-4 hours scrolling news necessarily. And we also see that more and more publishers are being present, for instance, on TikTok to deliver news to the younger people. And that is, I think, the best way forward to be there and to create more awareness around news and journalism and be there to kind of control the narrative around false news and verify sources and stuff. So I think, some way, somehow, this big techs will always be there. And it's easier said than done to solve this problem with trying to move more money towards local news and local journalism. But I think they need to think more like big tech and make products and solutions more suitable for an advertiser.
I really want to get into the different topics that you mentioned here, but then for the listeners, and before we go into the different changes and challenges, can you take us a little bit back in terms of your career and the beginning? You and me used to work together in Group M back in the days when I was a programmatic buyer, but what sort of led you into media, advertising, and the agency world?
It was quite random that I fell into this space. I worked in the UK for many years and studied there and somehow ended up in an agency in the UK. So I worked there for a few years, but we worked more with, it was a smaller agency where the focus was content and content production type of agency. So we didn't really work with media and in the same way and biddable media. But then I moved back to Norway in 2018. I kind of fell into Group M, now known as WPP Media, and been there ever since. So I'm rounding 7 years, I think, in August. So I've been in various roles, but mostly in programmatic. But now I lead the kind of the buying team in WPP Media, where everything from planning to media plans to actual buying, both direct IO to programmatic and paid social and search. So yeah, I've been there ever since. Love it. Loved working in media agency, and obviously we work with so many partners on the publishing side, but also have strong partnerships with the social big tech companies as well. So it's sometimes a difficult balance in order, because we want to support local media and local journalism and the media owners in Norway, but at the same time, we have other partners as well, that they deliver good solutions for our clients as well. So we have to have, there's a fine balance. And we take it kind of case by case, depending on the client, what they're trying to achieve. But yeah, the media world is an exciting time at the moment. And also the growth of retail media coming. Obviously in the Nordics, we're a bit behind the rest of the world, but it's coming. It's very interesting. We bought InfoSum. I don't know if you've heard about that. Our new CEO, Brian Lesser, came in a year ago, and he came from InfoSum, which is a clean room solution. Now we acquire that and part of WP Media, and that says a lot about us on the direction we're going, from moving away from ID and kind of thinking, data and data protection, and able to offer clean room solutions for our clients in terms of using data in a better way. And maybe this is where the strong partnership we already have with the local medias to kind of maybe help shift some of the budgets there, because we can attribute much better through our technology. So it's an exciting time. And yeah, I'm in WP Media and I love it.
That's great to hear. And I think one of the things here, I got the news here with the InfoSum, and just for the listeners, bringing down also clean rooms and just explaining it. This, I think, very much in terms of like first party data and being able to have direct relationship with those that you served and advertising to. And I think that's one of the topics we're going to cover. But then one thing that made me interesting having a conversation with you is that you've worked in the UK, you've been in Norway, you're also then having a little bit of a good global outlook in terms of the differences. And the way that you work with media publishers in Norway, how would you say that's different in terms of how it's operating? It's maybe less sort of fragmented with multiple players. It's like more consolidated. What would you say are the biggest sort of differences between media in Norway versus what you did in the UK?
Oh, in the UK, it was very hard to get a good overview of the big kind of publishers. Obviously, there were some big ones as well, but there's a lot. There's a lot of long tail. There's a lot. It's very fragmented, and for Norway and the Nordics in general, it's so much easier to kind of form that strong strategic partnership, because they are bigger and we want to work together with them, and much more. We have more control of kind of where the media spend is going. It's not like, when we talk about programmatic, a lot of people, compare maybe the programmatic supply chain with the US or in China, where most of the money is going to, hidden tech fees. But in Norway, where in the Nordics, because we have such strong relationships with the media and the publishers, we're much more in control of our supply chain. We're much more in control of, we're not buying foreign, unknown sites and stuff like that. So, yeah, much more in control, brand safe and brand suitable. And that is why we have the opportunity to do that, because the media landscape and the publisher landscape is such more consolidated. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of publishers to kind of having to deal with. So I would say for media agencies, it might be, it's an easier task to kind of buy media. Yeah. But we notice, like, when we work with hubbed clients or international clients that we get, from the UK to Norway, we can see that, it's hard for someone from the UK to sit and navigate the landscape in Norway, and most of the money might go to the big techs because that's what they know and what they think is safe, and they don't know how to kind of navigate that. But so what we're trying to say is, we need much more local understanding and, direction, and giving them the direction. And because we have the close relationships, we can steer the money more towards a fair share to the local publishers.
And I want to ask the question on that, because I see a lot of the advertising spend in terms of statistics really pouring into the likes of TikTok. Snapchat is huge in Norway, YouTube, the Google networks. Why do you think that's so attractive for the advertisers to be there? Clearly because they have a lot of eyeballs, but what do you think is driving this spend going there?
I think it's a bit of a combination. I think it depends a bit on the type of client and the type of target audience they have. But as I mentioned initially, it's number one for, smaller performance agencies or smaller boutique agencies, and maybe direct clients as well in-house. It's easier to navigate the tech platforms rather than having to deal with news publishers, because if there's many, there's lots to deal with. And if you want to set up programmatic, it's not as easy to do that in-house, and maybe for smaller agencies, they don't have the same tech rig like we in WPP Media would have. So I think that's one of the reasons. I also think that, there's a thing about younger generations. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it's true. I have young kids as well. They don't even know what news is. They don't know what, news publications is. That all they know is from their 2-3 years old, they know exactly what YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat is. That's what all their friends talk about. And this is where I think a lot of maybe brands also think we have to be there. But maybe not. Sometimes it's not even based on any modeling or any strategy, but they just know that we need to be there because we need to reach the younger audience. I also read something about there's an election year in Norway this year, and they're saying about the younger generation now, they don't get any political input besides TikTok. And that is a worry. But at the same time, I understand, because it's hard to understand who am I going to vote for, what are my political views. But it's easier because you get it in a short, bite-sized format on TikTok, for instance. And that's why I'm also kind of want to challenge the publishers, like, you need to be there, even though you're kind of working against them and trying to shift budgets. But at the same time, you need to be there, be a part of the dialogue, and control the narrative. So I think it's even though the publishers are trying to kind of shift budgets, at the same time they need to invest in those channels as well. Even though they deep down don't want to, but that's where the next generation. I would say Gen Z and Gen Alpha. That's the future. And I think it's really interesting with a publisher in Norway that are really investing in trying to reach a broader audience in terms of the younger ones are the Amedia in Norway, where they are putting some investments into giving younger people, like students or younger people, free subscriptions to their websites. So they can read the news for free. I think that's great. I don't know if that solves everything at all, but it's kind of shows initiative that you're actually listening and trying to kind of shape how younger people are going to read the news in the future. But yeah, that's kind of my long answer.
No, but it's a good one, and I think the example with our media here is brilliant. They've done several initiatives. One is that giving access to subscription at younger ages to actually get people to consume the content there. But I think also one thing that they've done in the editorial room is also getting the editorial more around, instead of looking at all the traffic, which also combines a lot of the older audience they're having a more focus on looking at what's the sort of usage pattern for the younger audience to get their editorial team really around how do we really go after this group. And you're spot on. I mean, younger audience consume media very differently, and they often skip sort of the traditional news entirely. And I think that it's going to be a focus more on the different formats that cater to the different needs in this case. And I want to sort of also then on this topic, because you said, of course, publishers should be present on TikTok and other channels. I'm in a big belief also that it's one thing is then that's where that audience, Gen Alpha and Gen Z are, and then in order to get them in. But then also then having ways that they can give content in a way that that audience easier can consume. So my question is more that there is really some publishers, and you mentioned Amedia, for example, manage to gain maybe more ad revenue and are more looking into the future. What do you think sets some publishers apart for the new world that we're going into? What's important for you guys?
I think there's a few things, but I find that if I speak from my own experience with the publishers and our partners that we work with, is that they follow kind of our way of work and our the way we need, because we are the media buyers. We are the ones who are serving the clients, and we are using our media partners in order to deliver what we're trying to achieve for our clients. And if they are making it the road to actually delivering that for our clients a bit longer, then we're gonna not 100% prioritize them. So what I've noticed is a lot of these small, I wouldn't say smaller, but a bit smaller than the usual big ones, publishers in the Nordics, for instance. I've also seen that, when we work with our WPP in the UK and other markets, is that the ones that have been a bit smaller have been a bit more open and really leaned into our technology, how we buy, pricing, inventory, prioritization. Of course, then they're going to see a shift and an increase in our investments. The ones that are kind of moving in a different direction from us and are trying to build walled gardens is, we'll maybe see that, our investments will shift because what we're trying to do, especially in WPP Media, where I work in globally and Nordically, is we want to see the media habits. We want to follow the media habits much more than what we think it happens in silo. When I sit and watch television, I watch connected TV, I stream something on Max, but at the same time I'm scrolling on my phone, but then I'm also listening to a podcast while I'm brushing my teeth. So you see, in order for us to kind of maximize our clients' budgets and get the most bang for the buck, is actually reaching these people and shifting our budgets and optimizing where our people are and to get the most impact. But having to buy things in silo still is not the way we're going. And publishers who are kind of in with us on our mission to do this, kind of media everywhere, will see a stronger partnership and bond, and see maybe that our investments will increase one place and decrease another place.
What does that mean in terms of, for example, here that how publishers operate versus how you guys buy? Would that be, for example, that maybe a bigger strategy is selling direct advertising to them versus you guys wanting to connect?
Yeah, that is one of the big things. Where maybe some publishers want to build their own platform, and kind of invite us in or clients in to book their own self-service platform, for instance, their own wall garden. And then we as a media agency are trying to connect all these dots and being a cross-channel, having a cross-channel vision. That doesn't work, because then we can't use AI to optimize the way we want. We can't use AI to get the most impact and the more money, more effect out of the budget. So yeah, that is a challenge. I like to use this anecdote, which I had a panel discussion in Next M in Sweden, where we talked about, what's the future for TV, and we were sat there with two media owners, and they were saying, we're trying to develop and offer our inventory programmatically, but obviously it's still a long way to go, because the TV space is still very heavily relied on IO bookings, for instance. And so a lot of media owners are trying to build like amazing products, but it's all like only available direct. And I'm like, we as a media agency have to deal with all these channels. Our clients have a media plan. We have to buy Snapchat, TikTok, these publications. We have to buy CTV. We have to buy linear TV. It's so much work for one advisor, one buyer. And then we are investing so much in AI in WPP Media, and the reason we're using AI is to optimize and find like what humans can't do in optimizing our campaigns and get the most for the budget. And I said, like, the anecdote is, we as a media agency, we have the key to our clients. We are the clients come to us, and we are their advisors to how to spend their marketing budget. A media owner often see through a keyhole to what we have to try and do. So they will see like, my channel's the best, spend money with me, at the same time not thinking about the whole landscape we're trying to navigate as our media agency working for our clients, because they're the one paying us. So that's how, like, my anecdote is, we have the key. We walk into the room, we see the client, we see the whole kind of challenge the client is having to try and reach their business goals or whatever that might be. But so I think sometimes media owners and publishers really need to kind of look at the broader perspective, what we're trying to achieve, because at the moment there's a hot topic in the industry at the moment, like, so much is going to the tech platforms. We need more money, we need to shift budgets for the democracy and etc. And I get it, but at the same time, our clients need to sell more products. So where is the middle ground? And yeah, so yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, but if you look at one of the, I think, value proposition that media has in sort of the comparing to sort of like maybe social media and others, is that they can offer content that's really focused on trust and then really also fact checked in many ways, and the brand safety that it offers advertisers. But then do you think sort of like the way that you work now, it's very, you look at the whole picture really, but what would you think in terms of the biggest value proposition that media sort and publishers bring versus when you work with others today?
I definitely, since the Nordic publishers market is much more consolidated and the general trust among the people is higher with local news. I think definitely there's a value there and something we need to continue to kind of build up and tell the story on behalf of our media partners. But at the same time, like the trust is higher. So wherever possible, yes, of course, we should buy media placements in these channels and publications. But at the same time, there's only so much people read the news. So hence, I'm always saying also, we can't only be on news channels. But absolutely, that is something we talk about a lot, like the trust, and the way we advise our clients as well is the local newspaper, local news, local media will have more trust, but at the same time, the trust isn't as high with the younger generation. They maybe trust more the national news agency NRK more than the commercial ones. So the question is, how can they build up that trust? How can publication build up that trust that then Gen Z or Gen Alpha one day can sit when they're in their 40s and 50s, they still have that trust or have built more trust over time? Or are we moving towards a whole type of different generation where they're like, I don't trust anyone. I will do my own fact checks, and maybe social media won't have the same impact anymore. But I definitely think the trust is the main thing. And hence why I'm saying local news publications need to be on social media in order to kind of control that narrative and have that trust there as well. Because TikTok and Snapchat aren't going anywhere.
I'm gonna also hit this with an anecdote or history, as you did. And I have a very clear memory from being younger with a family member here in the west coast of Norway, which ran a mechanic shop. And he had a very easy marketing strategy. He went with 1,000 Norwegian krona to the local newspaper, buy an ad there, and it would solve most of the advertising. But that has changed very dramatically now. And now I think it's more spent on Facebook and other places, which has also made it easier for these small businesses to do advertising. But then on the topic here, there has been a change in terms of where the eyeballs are. And I want to move into a sort of how buying behavior has changed. And media and the way that we consume it isn't the way it used to be. What do you think is sort of some of the biggest changes you see in terms of also the people that you are then serving ads to has changed and how they consume their content?
I think the attention, I think I read an article about, the attention span that you can hold, like the attention seconds a person have is decreasing for every generation. And it's scaringly very short for, let's say, Gen Alpha and Gen Z, and sometimes younger millennials, because they're so, they are big social media users. So I think in terms of on digital channels, the long short form content, like see YouTube with YouTube Shorts, and you see like Instagram, most people don't really scroll the actual feed anymore. It's more the reels, because it's all just like TikTok like content. And I think I can also see that the Nordic or the Nordic media publications also moving towards that type of content, on their websites, showing news in that social format. And I think that is in terms of, because the attention span is now so short, you have to serve news that way. You see it in like, Schibsted article on VG. They have a summary for kids, for younger, if you want to read. They can't really be bothered reading the full article. So I think because we're being bombarded with content constantly, we become a bit more numb to it, and a bit more like not I don't know the word, but you kind of like ignoring a lot. So I don't know how much impact a lot of this content is actually doing, and having the impact on people actually watching that, because you're being served with so much that the content has to be short but also delivering message ASAP within the first couple of seconds. Especially in these channels. But obviously, are you watching television and connected TV? That the attention span is longer because you're sat down and about to watch your favorite show. But I mean, like in terms of the typical channels on phones and laptops, and whilst you're working, etc., and reading the news online, this is, you know, we still only have 24 hours in a day, so but then consuming much more than we used to, so we need to process a lot more. So brands need to really think about, you know, the messaging and the format, and same with media owners in terms of how they're serving the content.
And going back, I think it was when we worked together, 2017, I remember a lot of the different buying that we did was sort of good old display ads. That was the style that was most used. But then there's been a really big change now in terms of also video growing and audio. How does sort of like your buying look like in terms of going away from only display ads? What are like one of the bigger focuses that you guys are having at the moment?
There's so much since I started with only the humble display banners, like you said. And the next thing after display was, you know, native, being really, you know, hot at the time. And then we moved into online video because the news publications were making more inventory around that, but obviously quite expensive. So we also moved towards the world of YouTube. And we kind of created a product around which we call today integrated video, which we buy in one using our AI to optimize. We buy across, you know, Twitch, YouTube, online video with the news publications. So we buy across that, so that we don't think about, oh, we're only buying YouTube or we're only buying online video on news sites. So that is quite a big product for us and a big focus. We see has been the biggest growth area for the last few years with us. And then another exciting thing that came out maybe 2 years ago was digital out of home. We're buying that programmatically. And then what is exciting now is we can in one buying way of buying, like an order coming in from a client, is that we can buy programmatic digital out home, programmatic audio, programmatic online video, and display in one buy, which is, I think we're on the forefront of it amongst other media agencies, our competitors, because then we can optimize and not having to, you know, one booking for video, one booking for digital out of home, but we can do it across channel and optimize and using AI, which I think is very unique. And I can't think of anyone doing it right now.
What would you say in terms of one ad format or one channel that you're personally really excited about at this moment? Which would that be?
Definitely programmatic out of home is a big one.
Can you explain that a little bit? What is that?
So basically, we set up and buy out of home, I wouldn't say digital posters outside in a buying platform like you would buy display, but this is out of home in areas in Norway or Nordics or wherever there is a connection. And then the vendors give us the opportunity to buy areas. Let's say we want to buy only in these geographical areas. So it's much more, we wouldn't say that programmatic out of home would be like the answer to all out of home advertising, because if you have an advertiser that just want to reach the whole of Norway, no one would buy that programmatically. But there's the out of home programmatic is more like a nice add-on. You know, if it's a sales driven campaign that is only for advertisers only have shops around these areas, you can kind of use certain types of data. So you can use, let's say, even though it's not anything new, it's weather targeting, for instance, or that it's raining today, let's advertise for sun cream in these areas because we know in Norway it's going to be really sunny that day. So opens up a lot of opportunities for our clients to kind of, also for maybe clients that don't really have that big budgets, for instance. So that has unlocked more new type of clients buying out of home that hasn't bought out of home before, which is very exciting for the out of home vendors like Yotsudeko and Clear Channel, having clients that have never bought out of home before. And this is what we see in general with the way we're moving with programmatic. Same with connected TV. We can buy that programmatically as well. For clients who normally is never on TV, now they can because they just want to reach Oslo. So yeah, but I think connected TV and programmatic out of home are the most exciting and up and coming area.
You mentioned a couple of things here, but I really want to sort of bring it down to some of the most important things that you see at the moment in terms of what do you think that publishers can do today to sort of stand out and get more attention in your media plan? And as you mentioned, for example, formats, you mentioned here you're focused now on first party data. If you were to break it down, sort of what is more important for you for sort of publishers in the way you see that they need to adapt?
Oh, that's a tough one. But I think, like I said before, I think to give us access to the best inventory and accessibility for us to buy and make it easy for us to kind of put budgets there, because we're getting access to the best inventory, the best formats, and it's done in an easy way. It's not like, oh my God, we need to do a special booking direct because this tech is not working with the integration in this platform. This is happening a lot for specialists sitting here trying to kind of divide out the budgets to the different channels in display, for instance. And we see that, oh my God, this connection is not working. Oh, this format we need to buy, we have to have an own deal for it because this is how then the specialist would rather work with someone else and say, well, we'll put money into this publisher who is also Norwegian. So, we all work with, so yeah, I would say that, because we wouldn't say, oh, then I'll put money on Facebook. No, we would put that to a different competitor of the publisher. Because most likely this budget has already been set for going on display, these news publications, but which news publications is up to the specialist, because they know best, they know what will get the best effects. So really kind of work and make it user friendly, and don't make it hard to buy when everything's meant to be automated and biddable and in the programmatic world.
I think that do you often see that? So you mentioned here the walled gardens, but it's basically also connecting with you guys in the ways that you operate and buy, and making it easy for you to access the different verticals that you want to place. That's sort of one of the bottlenecks that you guys are facing today.
That could be, yeah, one of them that we've experienced before. But, like often then we go into dialogue with the publishers and talk to them and sort this out. As long as we're on the same page that we want this to work, it's no brainer, and it's easy to kind of choose the right publishers. But I find for other channels, not necessarily, we're talking a bit about display here, but I'm talking about, let's say, connected TV, which we're trying to buy programmatically. A lot of the publishers aren't ready for it. They don't know how to do programmatic. They don't have as much control over their inventory as the traditional news publications that's selling display, that's abundant of. So that is a bit of a struggle. And then at the same time, we're saying, okay, we can buy it programmatically and, being able to shift budgets fluidly, but then having to buy it PG, for instance, at the end of the day, just makes it kind of not really the ideal way. So then we will suddenly work with a publisher that has better control of their inventory, are giving us better prices, giving us better access, and we can buy on programmatic PMP deals. I'm sorry I'm being technical, but you know, that is the way to unlock and have a better collaboration and unlock more budgets.
If you were to look into a little bit ahead and sort of the future of sort of how you guys buy on behalf of your clients, where do you sort of think programmatic advertising and publisher strategy needs to be more aligned in this case? You mentioned, for example, there the formats of, for example, reaching younger generation and so on. But if you were to sort of have like a future outlook, yeah, and then think about where the industry is going, what's important for you guys and where do publishers need to follow suit?
I think in terms of video content and kind of try and mirror the big tech channels and platforms and how they serve content. I think if you can't, compete with them, try and be them and try and compete in that space. I think maybe in 10 years' time, like I have no idea where it will be in terms of media because it's changing so rapidly, but maybe the newer generation won't even be on social media anymore because they're much more aware of the effects it has on mental health. So this is where maybe the news or the publishers need to find a way to kind of help them and take up that space in terms of be the kind of better version of social media, and a way where people can connect. Because basically, social media started because people wanted to connect with each other and be social. Um, but publishers are serving news. So maybe kind of figure out where they're going. Are they going to still just operate in news world, or are we moving towards something else? Are we building new products that are based on some sort of journalism? But I'm very intrigued, and I think if I was a media owner, working in Norway, for instance, I'd be, constantly having to figure out how are we going to work to renew ourselves and innovate in order to, serve news for the younger generation, and they're actually reading us and trusting us. I think it's a really hard question, and I have no idea what the answer is. But as a media agency in 10 years' time, I'm really intrigued. I think it's going to change drastically. I think there will be jobs in media agencies and media publishers that don't exist today. And I think that is something I think local publishers need to work together rather than in silo, trying to kind of make products. Of course, they're going to have to earn money and they have a commercial model, but working together to try and solve this, I think is really important. Um, and work together with the media agencies, not them in silo and then giving it to us, the solution, because the solution might not be it for us.
If I were to sort of summarize a little bit of the things that I take out from this is I find it really interesting how you guys are being able to focus more on like this, how to be across multiple channels is one of the things. And I think one of the things that you mentioned is good accessibility to these inventories and then working with you guys to then be able to then make it also easier for you to buy across channels is one of the big parts here. And then maybe not having those sort of walled gardens, but working with you. Number two that you mentioned is also, I think it has to do to a lot with how we're consuming content. And maybe the traditional formats with long articles and so on, I think you're basically saying here, can there be focus down on the same content, but you have a term in the industry called liquid content. How can you create different versions of that in either short form, in reel, in video, and so on? And I think that's where a position social media have been taking. They've been very good at sort of tailoring to maybe the shorter attention span that we're having is a very much here. So maybe one of the things here is being focused on offering multiple formats of the content they're having. Those are at least things that I hear from you that seems very, would you say any add-ons to that, or is that close to sort of being on the money?
I think it's being on the money. I think, and one last thing I would say is, and I think publishers are really, some of them are really good at this, but understanding our philosophy as an agency and where we're going, because some agencies differ, but understanding where we're going and trying to make a joint business plan with us in terms of trying to kind of work closely together and going that direction with us. And at the same time, understand the type of clients we work with. Because I would say that some publishers, when they hear that we're pitching for a client, and they're going to WPP Media and they're like, oh no, everything's going to go programmatic, and oh no, it's less direct. And I can understand there's a frustration, but that is the future. And leaning into that and understanding that you as a publisher are not the only one, and that them and not necessarily going to the big tech either. It might be happening that our strategy is democratizing buying programmatically more, because you can buy audio now, you can buy digital out of home now. You don't need big budgets in order to be on a connected TV. Understanding that the channels are broadening as well as going to the big tech. So some budgets might be shifted to programmatic audio, because that's what we're advising, because we said this is where the effect is for this campaign. Understanding that, I think, is also, and not just blaming the big tech. At least for WPP Media, because we are focusing more on, we are programmatic first and will always be, and that's how we build our tech and invest in tech. And understanding that is essential, and not, kind of throwing always the big tech under the bus. But I would say I got a number from our trading director saying that, because there was an article saying that 50% of the media spend in Norway in 2024, 50% of it went to the big tech. And of course, that sounds horrible. That's not good at all. Consider some of the big techs don't even have, presence in Norway. They might base other countries due to tax reasons. But for our share is only 18 to 20%. So that's quite a good thing, but we don't talk enough about it. We're always being taken under one brush with, 50% going to big tech, but that is not the case, because we have such a close relationship with all of our partners in Norway. And I think more and more, maybe the publishers need to really work with the smaller agencies and the in-house communities of advertisers to kind of maybe products that are easier for them to use, because they don't have the negotiation scale, they don't, but then try and kind of replicate the social media way of buying for the smaller ones, because I think that's where the incrementality will lie.
That's fantastic. And I really, really appreciate sort of the conversation. I take with me a lot of learnings. We do have a closing tradition on this podcast where the previous guest gets to leave a question for the next guest. And it's interesting you brought up sort of the divorce with one of the bigger one on the marketplace, because that was my last episode here, where I talked with Kjersti Løkke Stavrum, who's the CEO of the Tinius Trust, which owns Schibsted. And the question she asked here, and I find this interesting, this goes in terms of done content, and she asked, what would you be willing to pay for a service from your beloved news provider in addition to paying the subscription fee?
I don't think I would want to pay any more on what I'm paying today. And I think, speaking out of, I think, my group, I don't really have time. If I have to admit, this is kind of bad because I work in media. I don't read that much news. I'm not all much on the news publication. I'm a bit of a social media user, which I think I'm not always proudly saying this, so I wouldn't pay anymore. And we're in a difficult, the macroeconomics time we are in, and spending extra to read news. No, I'm getting it through the national news, and so I wouldn't pay anymore.
What if you could have the news in the way that you wanted? Would that be making it more interesting? I mean, you live a busy life. If you were to get the news in a format that you liked, would that change it?
I think news that I like is not a thing for me. I need news that are important that I need to be on top of now. So whatever that's happening. So when I see that things I like isn't necessarily news, it's more maybe if I read that is stuff I would go on social media to get because that's where I know I will be served with stuff that I like in terms of I get interior inspirations because we're building a house and stuff like that. But in terms of news, I need general news to be like on top of what's happening in the world. And that's kind of news definition for me. And I think that's a bit harsh. But that's I don't maybe I'm just very different. But tailoring news, I get the news I need, and that is every morning, the radio whilst I'm getting ready, and that's the news once a day. That's all the news I get every day. Once a day, 10 minutes.
If we were to, you said you're sort of like a social media junkie. If we were to go to sort of discover on Instagram, and what would it be like the renovation here? What would the discovery of
Yeah.
Anne look like?
The algorithm know exactly what my life, or what's happening in my life and what stage I'm in. It knows me so well. Like, I don't even have to search for interior design tips. It already knows. And yeah, you'll find interior design. You'll find reels of wives being fed up with their husbands because they're not doing the dishes. So it's quite, and it's very light, as you can say. I have to admit, like, there's so much bad things happening in the world at the moment that news 10 minutes a day is enough. And other around my interests and hobbies, because I have discovered paddle tennis. That's the content I need in terms of how I digest it. And I don't have many hours in a day. I have 2 kids, so news 10 minutes every morning, and then it's scrolling a social media junkie for inspiration and funny content whilst I'm on the bus, and maybe I'll listen to a podcast. So I wouldn't say that I'm the dream reader and news digester of the news of a publisher, unfortunately. And I think a lot of people and I'm almost 40, and a lot of people are the same as me. And that's
I don't think you're wrong. I think this is maybe a lot of the reality that we're having. And
mm,
one of the topics here in the industry is news avoidance in many ways. But I think you're pointing into something that is that we should maybe point ourselves that there's different ways of how and people are. So
mm,
I completely get that.
mm.
And you get to ask a question for the next guest. It's definitely somebody in the industry, maybe more on the publishing side, media, or do you have like a burning questions you would like to ask for the next question and the next guest coming on?
Yeah. Um, I would ask maybe where do they think the way news publishers are today in terms of websites, and you go into a website and you scroll and that's news headlines, click in, read. Do you think in 10 years' time that will still be the case, a website with news headlines and you click into an article? Or how would it be, do you think, if you could look into a crystal ball?
I would love to answer that question because that's the business in Kilkaya where we personalize front pages. But I will make sure to ask that to the next guest. But I love the question. Perfect. It couldn't be better. Yeah. No. So that's
Uh,
fantastic. I'll make sure to bring that on to the next guest. And I really, really appreciate you doing this. And I think you're bringing lots of good things that at least news media today need to think about, also in terms of where the media spend is going, how to be staying competitive. So I really appreciate your time. So thank you so much for doing this.
no problem.